Moving on to our next topic is that, just to date this podcast a little bit, but everyone was like really hyped over the fact that Alex Jones was on Joe Rogan. I really enjoyed it.
Fresh content. I'm so excited when Joe Rogan drops that new content. That new fire. Spits that truth. Joe Rogan, I just can't stop listening to him.
He is the real rapper. We're
going to get to that.
Yeah, it really does feel like the whole watching it really felt like a constantly shifting before and after picture of someone who'd gone through like a chemo platform or something. Because it was. I don't know why.
Wait, I don't. Who's the before after?
No, but like one of those like, if you eat this like calky powder and go to the gym twice a week, you could look like we could turn Alex Jones into Joe Rogan. Also, at the same time, Joe Rogan is going to look like Alex Jones once he like finally bombs and doesn't have a career anymore. Because God fucking like Joe Rogan is like the worst comedian. I fucking hate him. The whole reason he started this podcast
does he claim to be a comedian?
He started as a comedian.
That's true. He does have stand-ups that suck. I thought he was just the MMA guy.
No, like he started as a stand-up, and the reason he started the podcast was because he was such an insufferable jackass. No one in Hollywood or like the LA stand-up scene wanted to work with him.
Yeah.
So he was like, "I'm going off and making my own."
If you're too big of a
shit.
jackass to not be accepted in a stand-up scene, that's pretty bad.
Right. I say this with all my love and my heart for stand-up, the world's premier dying art form. Also like the LA stand-up scene. I've heard things about LA. That's probably a very insufferable stand-up scene. But yeah, at the same fucking time, I liked how everyone was obsessing over this because it's Alex Jones. Alex Jones is hilarious, but like the most insidious stuff the Joe Rogan experience does is when they don't have people like Alex Jones on, because Alex Jones is like comedic in his just like ridiculous conspiratorial fire and brimstone. You were saying before we were recording that he was very very comparable to like these end of days preachers.
Yeah, I mean there's a long tradition of this in the US, especially like whether it's I think Jonathan Edwards is his name, or the like burned over district in New York, like with the rise of Mormonism and all these Seventh-day Adventists and religions like that. Like there's a long history of just saying like the end times are very, very near. And they had a certain theatricality that, I mean, they were quite popular. And Alex Jones has that same theatricality. It's a fundamentally more, that language of religion just doesn't, I mean, Alex Jones does talk about God and like talks about, I don't know.
He talks about demons.
Yeah, exactly. He talks about demons a lot. But it's in a very, I mean, it's just updated to the modern US culture. I mean, it's much more secular. It's much more conspiratorial. There's something, I mean, maybe we can get into how just the rise of conspiracy and like how conspiracies is like a new language in the US, especially since World War II, I don't know, and like a growing US state and a growing like US intervention abroad, that like all of these like backroom deals, like the only way to like comprehend, the significance of that or the power of that and rationalize that against like your helplessness or your perceived helplessness and like actually changing anything about history or the government are these wild conspiracy theories about how the world is run.
So it's kind of interesting you say post World War II, because it kind of sounds like when the New World, I hate to say New World Order when talking about like conspiratorial thinking, but when like the current state of affairs came in after World War II and America was supposedly on top of the world, then I think a lot of people who don't feel like they're on top of the world within America have to turn to conspiratorial thinking to explain it.
Yeah.
The same time though, I think it's very true, like he's a lot of people he reminds me of, and possibly when he got started, a lot of these people talked about like religiosity and conspiracy thinking and demons and stuff, but in the realm of culture rather than politics. I feel like a lot of people who talk like him were talking about like what was on the latest movies and kids' nipple rings are too exposed or some shit. Where he's gone like full, they're putting shit in the water, which that used to be like and chemtrails, that used to have like a fine tradition of left-wing conspiratorial thinking.
Well, I gotta say, I think it's Germany and Norway were like the only two countries that don't have fluoride in the water, or the only two like Western countries.
Really?
I am pretty sure Germany does not have fluoride in the water.
Fucking hell.
Shout out the strong German defenders.
I have to go to the dentist now or some shit.
You will not turn the frogs gay in Germany. Alex Jones, we hear you. Alex Jones, come to Germany.
Do you think he's Alex Jones here? I don't know.
Yeah.
Alex Jonas.
Alex Jones.
Yeah, but like, yeah, like this is all funny and stuff because like Alex Jones is just a hilarious character.
Yeah, and he knows he's playing a character. I mean, I don't know it off the top of my head, but you can find his paper trail online. He wasn't always like this. He adopted the persona more and more when he realized it was getting traction. Views, getting traction. Yeah,
but like also there's the thing about like his very public divorce. The thing she said sounds like he kind of became the character a little bit as well. Sure. Yeah. More recently, but the thing about it was funny because like he's rattling away a mile a minute and Joe Rogan's not actually able to keep up with him. Because like Joe Rogan's entire podcast is like play the clip of the donkey that we put on DMT, and like if you put a donkey.
Jamie, can you play that clip of the frogs turning gay?
It's every like we gave DMT to a donkey and now discovered libertarianism or some shit. But like, yeah, he's not able to keep up with it. He's not pushing back because that's not what Joe Rogan does. Joe Rogan never pushes back. The only like I think I've heard the best description of the appeal of Joe Rogan's podcast, which is the idea of Joe Rogan's podcast is you put an expert in a room with someone who clearly isn't. And they do that sometimes where they have like some sort of astrobiologist or in the room, someone like from NASA talking to him about like, and then he'll mention something stupid about like, but octopuses could be from space. And like that's, I can understand the appeal of that if it wasn't like 3 fucking hours long.
Well, I think that is like, I don't know, maybe I'm being too optimistic because I'm just thinking of my friends who listen to Joe Rogan. I think that what they like about it is the idea like, yeah, they talk about some crazy science shit, man. Like they just smoke weed and think about like, man, it's fucking crazy. And that in itself is pretty harmless. And in fact, it's kind of interesting. I mean, you should... whatever like makes people have some more perspective of the world and like in the universe, you know, that's cool.
Well, there's like little things I've heard.
If only it were just that.
If it were just that, yeah. If it were just that, then maybe Ciarán would be talking about the like whole AM FM distinction of like actual machines versus fucking magic. Where like you have Elon Musk talking about the Hyperloop and it's like, where's the Hyperloop? It's like Hyperloop makes no fucking sense. Build trains. Trains exist.
The Hyperloop is the greatest expectation versus reality thing because like the reality is the Hyperloop is just like a shitty subway in Chicago, like because it's something about it's being piloted in Chicago, and it's just like a special subway to go from O'Hare Airport to downtown, and you're like stuck in a cab underground, and you go like just as fast as you would in like from the subway, the actual blue line. Yeah. Which isn't that great.
It just makes no fucking sense.
I should clarify. Subway's very good. Train service, very good. It's just, more. We need more of it, and it definitely needs to be repaired. So that's the reality. And then you have these like Chicago, speaking of like neoliberal bootlickers, like the people, the Chicago machine now, the version of that, like especially under Rahm Emanuel, is just like, yeah, we love this. We love the Hyperloop, don't we? We're just sitting in it. And, you know, that blue line. This is the future, man.
So that's all Joe Rogan was. That would be the problem. Is like a very civic engineering problem. But like, unfortunately, a lot of the guests that Joe Rogan has had on in the past are people like fucking Gavin McInnes, the guy who started a militia in the United States and tried to recreate the assassination of the communist leader of Japan by bootstepping down a New York street holding a katana. Normal dudes like that. And then more recently, one of the most recent episodes that I had the unfortunate duty, I don't know, I watched it, I hate watched it today, is
Ciarán has seen all 1,250 episodes, all 3 hours each of the Joe Rogan Experience. I watched him.
My brain has turned... You watched me watch it, which is possibly the only thing slightly better than actually watching it.
Ciarán was Twitch streaming himself watching the Joe Rogan Experience, and I watched the Twitch stream. I was donating.
That might actually be somewhat profitable. But the most recent episode, or one of the most recent episodes, he has the CEO of Twitter on, Jack, whatever his name is.
He's just Jack.
Jack Twitter.
He shed the last name for like not being, I don't know, like efficient enough.
Not enough character length.
Jack Dorsey, I just remembered.
There you go. He had on this woman from the Twitter company who's like their policy expert and policy spokeswoman.
Sorry, you just said the Twitter company like you were 80 years old, like the Google.
From the Googles.
The Twitter company.
The Bird company. But Joe Rogan, to bring on his journalistic expert, brought on Tim Pool, who is most famous on the left for being photographed with a bunch of neo-Nazis and trying to hide in his own beanie at the same time because he's like, I shouldn't be photographed with these people. Tim Pool is like the ultimate fucking concern trolling leftist. He tried to he equated on this podcast, equated intersectional feminism with like hate speech against trans people, being like, you're banning all these conservatives for not using the right pronouns and doing this coded language. That was his whole shtick. And then it's like, but then there's like this there's this whole fucking feminism thing happening on the internet, and he used intersectional feminism, and the woman from Twitter is like, I'm not sure what these terms mean, can you explain it? And he just fucking falls apart. It's beautiful. He thinks that intersectional feminism, he actually describes what intersectional the problem that intersectional feminists have with historical feminism. He was like, intersectional feminists don't care about poor people. They only talk about people in terms of race, not realizing the whole reason that intersectional feminism exists is because the history of feminism kind of ignored race and class a little bit. And it was painful. Why did I watch that? And then I scrolled down and I looked at the YouTube comments, because it's all on YouTube, the best place for discourse.
So I've been thinking about why Joe Rogan is popular, and I think there's some aspect of this, I guess people call him like an everyman personality kind of thing, kind of what you were saying, in that they put him in a room with an expert and he kind of reacts as the audience would react, like maybe say dumb things, but tries to be funny in that way.
He genuinely has somewhat of an acquisitive nature.
Yeah. And I would, and I think that the best comparison that I can think of for him is like Drake. Like, he's the Drake of podcasting.
All right, go on.
I mean, every implication.
Thesis statement.
Because, well, first of all, I would say they're probably roughly as popular as each other in their respective fields. Like, I don't know, Drake is maybe he's not the most popular rapper anymore. He's going down. So maybe Joe Rogan's still on the way up. But insofar as Mark Maron is, I don't know what, Jay-Z or something.
Do you think after Drake shows, people approach him like, you're the Joe Rogan of rapping?
Honestly, Drake would probably be like, that's so true. I've always respected him.
And never touch me. I'm going away.
But what's so similar about them is that so two things. The first is that they have this just completely I don't know if it's a sign of insecurity or something, but they just absorb whatever the guest is. I mean, this is well known among rap fans. They'll know that Drake is just constantly changing his style, and he'll go to Houston and be like, Houston feels like home. Finally, I feel like I have a home. And then he'll rap in the Houston style. And then he'll go to Atlanta and be like, finally, people understand me in Atlanta, In the same way that Joe Rogan has on some all right guy. And then Joe Rogan all of a sudden feels passionately about the plight of white farmers in South Africa. It's the same dynamic of just this completely blinkered, what, the only thing that's real is what is it directly in front of my face. And I think that comes from a place of just searching for something to grab onto, but it's the same. I mean, the dynamic among Drake is that you get at least he puts on people like Migos and he gives them a national bump. Yeah. The thing about Joe Rogan is that then he just becomes a gateway to the alt-right. So that's not quite the same dynamic. But I think that is also whatever that insecurity or latching onto something. The flip side of that is that it kind of makes them into a sympathetic everyman, in the sense that Drake
is everyman.
Well, like he sings, but he's not, like, as a singer, especially with all the auto-tune, he sings in such a way that you don't feel bad about singing along. So I'm getting deep into my music takes right now.
Go for it.
No Nick, like no parents.
I'm here wearing.
Our mom and dad, Nick and Yulia, are not here. So.
I'm wearing boots and a black and red flannel shirt to indicate to the world I'm definitely from a rap background myself, not punk or hardcore. But go on.
Like, so Drake, I think he sings in a way that like makes people like they don't feel bad about singing along because it's not so. I mean, it's melodic, but in an accessible way. Like he's not like a show-stopping singer that's like you just admire.
Yeah,
it's like sings in a way that you can sing.
Yeah,
and Joe Rogan is kind of like that for podcasting. He podcasts in a way that you could podcast. Like you're just sitting in the room smoking weed, being like, "That's crazy, man!" Like it's accessible.
And who's this? One of the Koch brothers. Well, let's get him in here for some questions.
Yeah,
I feel like I can sing like Drake. Has anyone got that hotline bling? Alright. But yeah, Joe Rogan, gateway to the alt-right. Woo!